Good. I was going to say good morning, Tim. Good afternoon, Tim.
Yes, it is. It's afternoon.
Thank you for joining me today. I'm so excited to talk to you.
For
We've
sure.
known each other for a few years, mostly through my husband and you and Stephanie. And so I'm super excited to talk to you today. Will you go ahead and just introduce yourself? Tell me kind of how your business started. Tell me how long you've been in business and what made you start it.
Oh, for sure. No, I just want to tell you thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. Appreciate you giving entrepreneurs a voice, and kind of giving us opportunity to speak and kind of encourage others through this platform. So thank you so much. So
Aw.
yeah, so me and the wife, we got married at 19, and so we was young, and I remember shortly thereafter, this is 2008, we got married, and that was obviously a rough time. 2009 was a hard time in the world, but also America had the housing market collapse. So I was working full time as a valet, and at night I was working 3 days a week, I believe, at Chick-fil-A to help my wife finish college because I promised her parents she would finish school. And so, yeah, so I want to make sure I held that promise for him. So,
That's
but
great.
anyway, we was doing that, and a friend of mine told me that there's money in cutting grass, and I did it a little bit as a kid. I think like most young boys, and I went out there and I remember doing it. He was like, "Hey, I think you can make a little side money to help pay the bills," and I was like, "Well, great. I need options here," and so we was my father-in-law let me borrow a truck of his, an old '89 Dodge W100, and I brought that back from Virginia, and I borrowed $500 from my wife's student loan money, and we started Wise Cut Landscaping, basically from nothing, with really no experience, and just kind of have learned and grown from there.
That's good. So $500.
$500. I remember my wife had a little bit of money left over from her student loan. I'm not sure if it was the loan or the Pell Grant or whatever it was, but she had a little bit of money left over. And I remember finding a trailer, a mower, a weed eater, edger, and a blower. Somebody needed to unload it. They was struggling, and bought all of that for $500. And I actually went out on Saturdays and after work, and I would knock on doors. The grass was like 2 foot high, and I would say, "Hey, can I cut your yard?" And they say, "We have no money," and I'd say, "I'd do it for free." And I just needed to learn because I didn't know what I was doing, and then they complained, and so because I had no idea what I was doing, so it was such a learning. And then a few weeks later, I was able to get $20 out of people, and then a little longer, I was able to get a little while longer, I was able to get a little more, and it just kind of grew from there. And then I started cold calling property management companies. I didn't even really know what an HOA was at that time, but I started cold calling them, and there's a property management close by that had a big, like a townhome community, and we put the bid in. And I remember driving home from the airport to valet, and I got the email that they accepted our contract. And so it was huge. I immediately told her my job that I gave my 2 week notice, and I thought $2,500 a month was life changing. And so I didn't realize all the other expenses that come with owning a business. So it was definitely a learning piece. And but Lord's been faithful through it all.
Yeah. How did that HOA project go?
Well, I remember the first time, it was March 1st, the contract started, and I remember going out there and cutting it. I was by myself, and my brother showed up a few hours later to help me. The grass was frosty, it was cold. Anyway, we got it done, and then about a month into it, I got called into a meeting at the property management company, and they called me in there, and it didn't go well. They asked me what was wrong with me. They said, "Am I stupid?" They said, "This is not how this is supposed to look out here." And I had honestly no idea about what was included in the scope of work. It was very vague when they gave it to me. And so the scope of work didn't have some stuff in there that now naturally we do in all of our properties. And the Lord gave me favor. And I remember leaving that meeting pretty discouraged,
Mhm.
thinking, "Hey, my back's against the wall. I quit my job. Not a lot of options here. Didn't have much other work," and so I left that meeting. And this was in April, right before Easter. I remember my brother, who's a pastor, saying, "Hey, we want to put some mulch at the church. Do you think you could put it on your trailer? We're trying to find some people to donate the mulch." And he has a pretty decent sized church, but it still has a tight budget. And so I I said, hey, you know what? I felt in my spirit at that moment to just donate the mulch. And at that point, my wife and I had probably about $1,500 in the bank, and the mulch was like $890. And I went out there with my wife, and we spread the mulch with a couple guys from his church, and we cleaned it up. And I remember thinking, you know what, Lord, you're going to work all this out. And we resubmitted a new bid. They asked us to rebid the property, which I felt like they wasn't going to take it. It was just them being nice. And we resubmitted the bid for $4,600 a month, and they accepted the new price. And we held that property for about 9 years. They spent about $800,000. That one and a couple others that came on shortly thereafter over the 9 years. And I just think back to that, that time that was such a pivotal time in our lives, and God was faithful, and we just kept doing what we were supposed to do. But the big thing was we made it right. That next day, my wife and I was at that property. We was cleaning up the things that they complained about. We fixed it, not knowing what the long term decision would be with that community. But we made it right either way, because I like to do stuff and make it right. And so it's kind of a big motto we have: let's make it right. If we mess it up, let's make it right. So.
That's so good. I love it. I love that you guys started with such a little amount, because I think a lot of people feel like they have to have $100,000 in the bank to start a business, and that's not true. And a lot of the most successful businesses are ones that started just like yours with a few $100s. And I
And I'm
love
not.
that.
I wouldn't complain about having $100,000 in the bank to start
Me
the
neither.
business, but I think a lot of people, that's not the reality they live in, and so we have to work with what we're given, and
Yeah.
we have to be good stewards of that. And so,
Yeah.
that's something me and the wife has tried to do since day one: is be good stewards of every opportunity and everything that the Lord has given us. So it's something
Yeah.
important for us.
Do you think on the HOA you came in the cheapest bid, or do you think they just saw your character and they just loved you?
So I never met nobody on that board. I definitely think I had to be the cheapest bid. I had no idea what I was doing. I kind of just guessed it. Uh, so I definitely think I was the cheapest bid, just guessing at it. And I think after they met me, I think that there was a few people in that boardroom that actually God gave me favor with, and they gave me an opportunity to keep doing that. I think one of them, Peter. Um, he actually allowed me to go to multiple other neighborhoods that he moved into from the years to follow, and he kept on helping us out find new work, and we still talk today. And so I think about that was one person that kind of believed in me, and
Hmm.
gave us our start.
Did they know you were a new business?
I don't think they did. Again, I think they just had a list of papers of quotes,
Yeah.
and we was just one of them mixed up. I think a lot of times we kind of overanalyze some of them things.
Yeah.
Now we do things a little differently when we quote properties, but just getting, just throwing a bid out there, we don't do that as much. We like to walk the site with someone that's the decision maker. We prefer not to just toss bids in the air. It takes time, it takes energy, and the close rate is so low. Normally we never hear from them again. And so we never get closure. We never know what happened. We never know if it was high or low. So ideally, that's not the way we do things now. There's special occasions that we do for clients that, can you help us out? But that's not the way we like to do business now.
That's good. I like that. Talk to me about, well, I mean, that was a tough day, but in the course of business, can you look back and see like a really hard day? What's been a hard day for you guys?
So, I think in general, being an entrepreneur is like riding a roller coaster.
Hmm.
So you wake up, maybe you have an email cancellation of a contract, and you're on the floor, right? It's like, oh man, this is never going to turn out well. And then 3 hours later, you got a new contract, and then that evening, your best crew leader quits, right?
Yes.
And I think that's pretty much what most entrepreneurs go through on any given day. That can be their reality. And so I think about many times in business, that's been me and my wife's reality. When we put the work in, we did everything we could to keep people happy, to do the right thing, and you still lose the work.
Yeah.
you
Yep.
know you bend over backwards and you still lose the work, and that happens.
Mhm.
And then you get a new contract, and it's like it's going to be okay, it's all going to work out. And then the person that you felt like would be there forever, they're not there anymore. And nothing wrong with that. People's
Mhm.
lives move on, and that's part of. But the people that I get to work with and get to be around is such a blessing, because they become like family, right?
Yeah.
You count on them and they count on you, and so you try to do right by them. But I would say that just in the general time of being a business owner, there's been many days like that you question, is
Mhm.
this really what you're supposed to do? Is it sometimes like is it really even worth it? And then I think that's when I go back to what the purpose is and
Yeah.
aligning myself with that. Hey, we have a tremendous opportunity to invest and change people's, even the course of their lives. There's so many guys that's come through here and ladies that their whole life has been changed, and quite a few, I mean, have started their own business and other things have happened. So we've been a facilitator of some of that, and
Yeah.
so we have to look at the big picture as well.
Yeah. That's good. Okay, so you talked about your wife. What I know that she doesn't necessarily work. Does she work full time in the business, or is she, well,
So
how much do you guys rely on each other?
so my wife is absolutely one of the number one reasons, besides the Lord, that we've been successful. She's a if she has a task sheet in front of her, she's going to knock it out. She's going to get it done. Like we'll be driving down the road and we'll be talking about either property or rental property we have or just something in general. And she pulls open her phone and she's got this all these things on her phone. Me, I seem to keep it more in my head and some stuff falls by the wayside. So as far as the balance, we're perfectly balanced. She's the budgeter, she's the financial person, she's the numbers person. And I'm the one to go out there and say, hey, we can make it happen. And I
Yeah.
kind of stretch the limit. And then we have a trust relationship that she says, let's not do that. And I trust that she has our best interest at heart. Um, she does work for the business. Her schedule is pretty good for her, as far as we got two little girls, and they're a huge part of our life. So, but she does work in the business. She's working today, so she comes to the office and she manages some of the administration from the office personnel, and then also the books. So she takes care of all that, and she gets on to me when receipts aren't uploaded. So that's her thing. So she's more flexible with me than other people, but she does not like to not know what receipts have not been uploaded. It's her pet peeve. She wants to see them. She wants to know what they were for, what job, what PO, where did they go. So
That's right. Good. She's my kind of girl.
yeah.
So you talked about the guys that have come through and being affected. So most of the people I'm talking to are faith driven or kingdom minded entrepreneurs. So talk to me about like faith and how has faith affected your relationship with the Lord? How has it affected you guys in business? Where does it come in? Is there any lines? I mean,
So at the end of the day, we're for profit. We're not a nonprofit, but we're also for people, right? So there's many times where an account manager will reach out to me and say, "Hey, Tim, this project is not going right, or this is not this budget. We did not budget this correctly." And the call is, well, let's make it right. And so there's instances that we have to do the hard things. And I think that's just more of being a person of integrity. It's one of our core values. It obviously stems from faith, but as just a person, I try to operate with integrity. I tell our team, let's operate with integrity. If we mess up, let's own up. It's something we talk about regular. Um, but the faith part has been a huge thing as far as how we operate. But also we have to be accountable. And I think a lot of people get a little bit confused and think, well, since you're a person of faith, you give us more grace. Well, also there is a level there that means that we have to be accountable for what has been required of us. And so there's kind of a thin line there to walk, and that's something that as a believer that me and my wife do, and we hey, we'll extend grace.
mhm,
The Lord's extended us grace, we extend grace, but we also understand there's accountability, and so we have to hold each other accountable. And so I can think about an instance a couple years ago that I was looking over a payroll sheet and I saw one of our team members pay, and I knew they had gotten a raise 6 months earlier. Well, I failed to do the process and do the sign off sheet to send it to the office. And at that point, it was thousands of dollars they missed out on. And I can think about immediately, you got an option. Don't say nothing and give them the raise,
right.
or tell them what happened and make up the back pay. And so I went to that person. I said, hey, we messed up. They didn't even notice. and they don't pay attention. They're just young. They're just going about it. Didn't even recognize it. I guess they never even looked at their pay stubs. I don't know how they missed it, but it was thousands and thousands of dollars. And I said, hey, we got an issue here, and we need to make it right. So it's your choice. Two options. We can pay it to you all at once. The back pay. Here's how many hours. Here's how much it is. We then went back and calculated it all, and or we can pay it over a few weeks, whatever works for you, to try to limit taxes, because I know the taxes we're probably going to hit them. And so there's like, no, hey, let's pay it over 4 weeks, and it'd be better. We kind of looked at it, that would be a good option, that they wouldn't get all them taxes. And so it worked out, but nobody knew but me and that person. We had a conversation, and I didn't follow protocol and have the sheet signed off for their raise, or they signed it and I never turned it into the office for them to put it through. And so, but yeah, that's just something behind the scenes, like as a
Hmm.
business owner, I'm a believer, but just integrity, right? Like
Yeah.
make it right. They're doing their job. They've done what you've asked them to do. Make it right.
Yeah. Is that girl still there?
So they worked for about a year longer, and then they left, and now they're doing audio video. It was
Oh,
something they was real passionate about. Yeah. So
yeah.
they transitioned, but as far as like, they were so happy. Like they was
Yeah.
like, I never would have knew. But again, it wasn't about them not knowing, but I knew, and
Yeah.
I knew what needed to be done to make it right. So,
Yeah.
and that's what happened. So it worked out well. And I mean, to this day, like when people come in, they question something, I can always refer back to that. And the people that were here at that time, some were still here, they knew, they heard about it. It's
Yeah.
like, hey, I'm not here trying to get over anybody's hours. I'm not trying to shave off 30 minutes a day off of 30 people so I can gain a little extra. I don't operate like that. So
That's good. Not that you did it for personal gain, but you gained some loyalty there. So
for
much
sure,
with that employee, at least, and other people that she told about it. And I mean, I know that
for sure,
wasn't your motive, but you definitely had a win that day, just deciding to do the right thing.
for sure.
That's so good. How big is your business now? How many employees do you have?
So during the summer months, we're normally over 2 dozen. And then in the winter, we kind of scale back a little bit, depending on, kind of the workload and after the leaves and stuff. So normally in our market, we have a period of about, depending on how cold it gets and how soon, December 15th to January 1st normally starts like a pretty kind of a pretty steep slowdown up until about March 1st. So normally about 60 days.
Okay.
And then normally it's ramping back up for the season. By April 1st, you're full throttle all the way to basically December, mid-December. There's always something going on.
Yeah. How do you survive those months?
So the great thing about our industry, and I think that I'm passionate about anybody in the service industry, is that we have contracts. So, a customer's contract comes in and they're broken down into 12 months.
Mhm.
So we're doing more work in May, June, July, but recouping them costs in January, February. So that's sometimes with new people and maybe a management role or a board, are like, well, you guys aren't coming as much. It's like, yeah, but we was there a lot in the summer. I mean, we
Right.
spent a lot of our time there in the summer. And so it works out well for us that we're able to recoup some of that cost during the winter months to ramp back up in the spring and summer.
Yeah. And keep that revenue consistent, more consistent.
Yeah, so 65 to 70% of our revenue is monthly reoccurring, and then 30, depending on our enhancements and our projects, our 30% is one-off services for a client. So if we go from there.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. Um, so I want to talk finances because one of the things
Okay.
you're doing right now is you're starting to do some business coaching, and your heart is to correct me if I'm wrong. Your heart is to work with small business owners like yourself, like you found yourself 10 years ago, and help them with all the things. And when I heard you talking about it, one of the things you mentioned was finances, and I was like, so let's talk about it because I can geek out on it all day long.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of times, even myself, I looked at it and I'm like, we're saying we're profitable, but we don't have any money. So it's like it doesn't make sense. And you think about the cycle of monthly cycle, we're normally turning work out that we're using the previous month's income for to pay for them work. So you're normally always in a cycle of waiting for that money to come back. And a lot of business owners struggle with that. They struggle with thinking, well, especially business owners when they first start, they go, well, what if I never receive that money? Well, that's a risk. but there's also a reward too, right? Like you're doing a job, and then that money's going to come in, and then you're going to allocate it to the right areas of the business, and then you're going to do another job, and then slowly that money is going to compound and grow.
Yeah.
And that's what we've seen over 15 years. There's months that are bad,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's months that are good, and then there's
Mm-hmm.
months that are okay. And so learning how to balance the months and budgeting, and like I always tell people, our management team is responsible for the gross profit. They're responsible for the top line. If
Yes.
I go out there and go crazy and make crazy expenses, they cannot be responsible for the net, because I affect the net and how I manage it. So when I talk to them about what their responsibility is, it's how is our production,
Yeah.
how is our waste with materials related to production.
Right.
If I want to sit in the office and have a $60,000 computer screen in front of my face that could do the same thing as an $800 computer screen, they can't be responsible for that.
Nope.
However, if in the mornings it takes 50 minutes for 10 crews to get out of the shop, and
Yep.
that's 25 people, well, that's where, the manager's responsibility. They have some, hey, how can we make this better and more efficient? And that controls their side of the equation. And so that's something that, we give ownership to, like, hey, looking at that number, that's you guys' responsibility. And then I'll make sure that I don't make foolish decisions on the bottom side of that. And
Yeah.
so, our team has done well at taking ownership of that, and they thrive on knowing, hey, they're a part of that process.
That's so good. I work with business owners all the time, Tim, and you put it so well that holding those managers responsible for that top line, that revenue, the cost of goods sold, but the business owner is responsible for that bottom part of that P&L. And a lot of times they're frustrated and turn that frustration to managers, and when it's actually you.
Yeah.
It's you, because you're the majority. As the business owner, you make the majority of the decisions on that bottom line. So you're absolutely right. What part do they have in budgeting? Do you involve them in budgeting?
So their part is they monitor they monitor the wages, weekly wages that are getting spent for production.
Right.
So like they have overtime percentages that they monitor and pay attention to. They have goals set around bonuses around that, so that they're paying attention to these numbers. Because the reality is, like, there's some weeks that we have heavy overtime, and we do that based on season. But there's other times that we don't need to utilize the overtime. But if we're not careful, and I know when I was watching it and managing it, I was more like, hey, whatever. It's, because I would be 30 other things in my mind.
Right.
So now it's like they're focusing on them numbers. Hey, here's our budget. Here's what we're doing, forecasting for that week, and saying, hey, what do we actually need? Do we need 600 labor hours, or do we need 800 labor hours? And so it's a hard thing about business, right? Like at the end of the day, somebody has to be responsible for the budget.
Yep.
And so they are responsible for that side, and they've done well at that. And then they're also responsible for the equipment side, like damages,
Mm-hmm.
waste, like somebody didn't check the oil in the motor, and now you got a motor blown up on a mower or whatever would
Yep.
happen. And then also just like not utilizing materials well, throwing away stuff that shouldn't be. I think about like this last year, one change that we made. The previous season, we noticed that we had about $8,000 in flowers that we just threw away at the end of the season. And at the end of the year, I just told them, I said, hey, we need to find a solution. And they put out racks near our water spot, near our water source. And so now when the crews come back with plants, it's something so simple. And a lot of companies, big companies, probably do it, but as a smaller company, we're just kind of not paying attention to all these little things. And now the guys are required to put, the crews are required to put the flowers or the plants on the racks, and then they get watered every day. So this year, we have saved thousands of dollars in non-wasted plants by making a small change like
Yeah.
that. And so they've done well, just kind of, utilizing that. I went out there yesterday, and I think there was like literally 8 plants on there. And I think about last year when we started it, there'd be like 300 plants. And it just wasn't, it just constant, not paying attention to something. And so now they, you give them something, they took ownership of it, and they kind of ran with it.
I was going to say, it's all about that ownership, owning it, coming into work and saying, like, this is my deal. These
For
plants,
sure.
I'm going to take care of these like they're mine.
Yeah, for
It's
sure.
so good. You've done such a great job. I saw in your video you had all the values in the workshop, in the shop. your
Yeah, yeah,
company
yeah.
values. Is that right? That's what they are, right?
Correct. So we have a saying here called the wise way, and basically it's willing. W stands for willing, and we say, are you willing to do whatever it takes for your teammate to be successful? Because I always think it starts with team, customer be impressed, and company to move forward. I really think it goes that direction. In the last decade, we've seen a complete shift in how businesses are ran and they're managed, and that's good. That's good for the team. It's good for the people that are there, literally in the field every day doing the things necessary to keep the business running. And so that willing is like team, customer, company. Team has to be kind of at the forefront. And when you take care of team, they take care of customer. And when you take care of customer, they take care of company. And so the next thing is integrity. I stands for integrity. If we mess up, we own up. And then safety. It's a big thing that we talk about. I mean, obviously, every day we want our crews to get back safe. I mean, that's just anytime you're in a vehicle, you're around equipment. There's obviously dangers. And the last thing is excellence. E stands for excellence, and I just want to win. Like, it's great to win. It's fun to win, and we want to do that as much as we can in everything that we do.
Yeah, that's so good. So good. Man, I could sit here all day long listening to you.
Yeah,
I love it. It's so exciting. Um, I really, really do. I've been watching you. You've been sharing on Facebook and you've been sharing on LinkedIn, and I know you probably feel like it's no big deal. And for all of us that do that, it feels weird because it's like, I don't. What do I have to say? But um, I've really enjoyed it, and I'm sure that others have really enjoyed it because it's really good. You're very encouraging. It's good to know, like just to see the years of just refining the process and
yeah,
refining the process and then every year refining the process. And I just love it when you talk about financials and how it's not even after all of these years and all this refining, it's not a walk in the park,
no,
and it's still up and
no.
down, and it's still you're still having to budget, and you're still having to look at those things and still see where those things are, where you're winning and where you're not.
Yeah, and you have to be willing when you see the areas you're not willing and we're not winning to say, hey, what can we do better? Because I think a lot of times we kind of put our head in the sand and say, oh, well, I'm doing everything I can, and a big part of that is, hey, looking at it with kind of an outside perspective, like just start taking the blinders off and saying, hey, what, where is there waste? Where is there? Let's,
Mhm.
I always tell people when we're working with them, like, hey, especially like people that are in business, I say, hey, let's not worry. As soon as you tell somebody to raise their price, they get extremely scared,
Yeah,
right? So let's not talk about raising prices, because the reality is, let's talk about being more efficient so that when you do get to the day you raise prices, because your work quality is so great, that your profit and your margins are already
yeah,
impeccable. And so, that's something we talk about all the time. I can think about one gentleman I work with. When he started, he never tracked production hours, man hours, and rates. And so the first 3 months, we kind of started doing a trend, and he was averaging around $52 an hour, which isn't bad,
right.
but but it just wasn't good.
Yeah,
And last month when we met, we got done running his man hours, and in the last 3 months, he's went from 50 to over $80 in man hour. So now he hasn't been selling a ton more work. He's actually been doing less work but making more money, and it equated to thousands of dollars in more profit each month. And such a small change, because when we talked about raising, he's like, I don't think I can get more money. I was like, well, why are we worried about that? Let's worry about where you're
yeah,
inefficient at, and let's find them areas. And we did. There was so many things that he just wasn't efficient at, and so now he's implemented things that stop damages from happening. He has a checklist when he goes into people's homes. He has a moving company, so he's writing down the damages on the wall, the floors, something so simple. But weekly, he was spending $300, $500, $600 on damages every week,
yeah,
and that affects when you just do a basic sheet of saying, hey, I had 10 hours on site and I charged $1,000 or whatever it is. Well, now you got to take all this other stuff off that was beating his man hour rate down,
yeah.
and so it's worked out well.
That's so good. I love it. I saw that you shared a video about that too.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
and that's the same thing. We all want to like increase that revenue. But again, like if you can just figure out how to increase that bottom line by just cutting out waste and inefficiency and stuff. You're
yeah.
so right. So right, looking at all of it.
Yeah.
How do you decide in the morning, Tim, what's important today? As a business owner, what am I supposed to focus on today?
So I'm an early riser. This morning I was at the gym at 5:20, and then I was walking 3 miles. I kind of do like a little bit of a like a little. Normally, sometimes I'll run with me and my wife will run, but the last couple of weeks I've been walking more because it's been a little colder. But them are two things I try to check off my list most days. It's a little bit of mental clarity time, praying, just talking to the Lord. I some of the best ideas I feel like I ever come to mind are during just a walk, a quiet time with no music, no AirPods in my ears. It's just nature at 5:20 in the morning. And the second thing is there's no team member calling me, there's no manager calling me, there's no customer calling me. It's the part of the day that's quiet, and it's the part of the day for me just to clear my thoughts. So them are the two things that are very important for me. On a weekly, I try to look at the numbers. We have a software that we use called Aspire. That's we've started implementing in the last 12 months. It's been a beast. It's a beast. It's been a lot of work, but it gives us a lot of data. It breaks down every job and job costing and stuff like that. So I keep an eye on them things, and then basically just keeping a pulse on how our teams are doing. Right, like going by job sites, looking at quality, checking on things, seeing where we need to make improvement. Maybe it's a morale thing, maybe it's a quality thing, whatever that looks like. So that's my role has changed a lot in the last couple of years. I haven't been on a mower in 3 or 4 years, so that's been nice because I did it for a long time. But some days you still miss that because it was a different level of stress. It was a different level of um, different level. It was different
Yeah, yeah. Every once in a while, you want to get out there with a mask on, with a
for
disguise on.
sure, for
Let me
sure,
just mow the grass today.
for sure.
That's awesome. Well, I will let you go. I really appreciate all that you've done and said here today. And I'll share this with your audience, with mine. And are you doing coaching just for people local? Or are you doing anything virtual?
We do virtual, so I do have some
Okay.
clients that live one of them lives in PA and a couple other places. And so our niche is kind of that business owner, like that very early startup, like just kind of getting going. We have kind of three tiers of pricing, and it's really coaches can be very expensive, and I'm very familiar with how much coaching costs. So I really try to make that a client that's 100,000 to 1.5 million has an opportunity to make some really good gains and see some really big improvements in their business to get them over that next hump. And I kind of broke it down in like that 100,000 to 400,000 stage, which is normally an owner operator. Doesn't matter the business; they're normally still in the truck. They're normally still in the daily grind. Now you get to that $400,000 mark. They're making decisions every day of what they're not going to ever get to. Normally, it's
Yeah.
billing, it's missing money, and then the next stage is like that 400 to a million, a pretty big, pretty wide range. But at that point, you might have an office assistant. You might have, now you got a delegation point. You have to delegate.
Yep.
And if you don't delegate, it starts
This
to
is
fall
it.
apart. And then that million plus, that's really a place that you kind of like, you're really going to start looking at long term vision, right? You can't think daily or
Mm.
weekly. You got to think monthly and yearly. You got to
Yeah.
start visioning out what is our plan next year? Like we're already planning a year or two out. We're looking at, hey, what does that look like? Even if you're not trying to grow, you're still forecasting, budgeting, how much equipment we need to budget for. All these things need to happen. And so it's been good. I've enjoyed it. It's been something that we've seen a lot of people that felt like we've provided tremendous value, and it's been something I've really enjoyed because it gives me an opportunity to be around some other high achievers that are really pushing, and they're driven to get their business to a place that it provides their team with more opportunity, and it also changes even the legacy of their own immediate family sometimes and
Yeah.
gives them opportunity.
Yeah.
So
Love it. So good. If you're watching, we're gonna have. I'm gonna be hosting a lunch and learn on Friday, so I don't think Timothy's gonna be there. But if you want to come and join me, I'll be there, just talking about financial foundations for small businesses. Those small businesses that are in the 100 to 500,000, mostly. Just some foundational things that we'll be talking about. It's a free webinar at noon on Friday, so come join us. The link to register is on my website. I think that's it. You have anything, any last words?
Penny, I just want to tell you, thank you. I just, as business owners, entrepreneurs that are watching this, take advantage of what she's offering you. I don't think I think a lot of times we can make a lot of excuses. I need to do this and that, but find an hour in your schedule. Find that time to sit down and learn something that's actually going to take the business forward versus staying stuck where it's at. So anytime you can be a part of that, be a part of it. It's been transformational for my life and for my family and for the business. So never quit learning.
Yay, I love it. Thanks, Tim. Tell Stephanie we said hi.
I will. Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Okay, you too. Bye bye.
Bye.